So now it's time for the main event. Let's welcome up Courtney Klein, CEO and co-founder of SeedSpot. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So for those of you who, is anyone here not familiar with SeedSpot? No? We've got some hands here. So if you don't mind just sharing your story about what is SeedSpot.
Sure. Incredibly excited to be here tonight, and thank you for having me. Galvanize, thanks for hosting. SeedSpot started 5 years ago. The whole premise of our body of work is to support early stage social entrepreneurs. So we look for entrepreneurs that are building a product, a service, or a technology that improves lives or makes communities stronger. And so our whole model is designed around finding early stage entrepreneurs. It could be a back of a napkin idea, it could be pre-revenue, it could be I have a problem I want to solve but I have no idea how to address it. Coming to SeedSpot provides the mentorship, a really robust curriculum designed exclusively around social enterprise, access to our demo day events, an incredible network of attorneys and accountants and designers, and really the whole model is built around this community, supporting entrepreneurs that believe that through entrepreneurship we can create social change. So we may get into more of it, but at the broadest level, we really set out on a mission to plant a seed here in Phoenix. That social entrepreneurs could have a home and a safe space. A few unique things about SeedSpot is that we don't take equity in the entrepreneurs that we work with. Most other incubators sustain their business model by taking a piece. We believe that the entrepreneur should always own 100% until they decide that they want to take a liquidity event or raise capital and give up a piece of their company. And we are really proud of the work we do in supporting a very diverse range of entrepreneurs. So we might dive into that a bit later. But.
Great, awesome. And then just for everyone in the audience, this is Female Founders Month, and we have a special hashtag here at Startup Grind. Yeah, let's clap that up. That's a big deal. Yeah. We have a special hashtag. It's SG Women. So please, if you're tweeting, please do tweet. But please use SG Women. That would be really great to help support all of our female founders around the world. Now you kind of started diving in a little bit about your model with SeedSpot, but I want to take it a little step further, actually a lot step further. What was your childhood like? What was that first spark of entrepreneurship? I'm sure SeedSpot's not the first thing you started.
It is officially the second thing I started, and I actually thought when I was a kid that I was going to become Katie Couric. I dreamed of working on national television and living in New York, so I actually entered Arizona State University as a broadcast journalism major, and really thought throughout my entire childhood that I was going to be on national TV. But I traveled to the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico after my freshman year in college, and I lived in a rural village, slept in a hammock, burned toilet paper, showered in the rain. By some standards, this community had absolutely nothing, and yet it was the richest community I had ever been in, because the community had dreams and aspirations of what it could become, and we as volunteers for the summer were there to help that community materialize that.
What brought you there, by the way?
It was a college service trip, and I just decided that sounded like a great adventure, and as I thought about being Katie Couric, I thought I'm just going to travel around the world and tell stories of humanity, and so it drew me there, in the first place. But when I got there, it was jarring to me that I was 19 years old. I had never seen how other parts of the world actually lived. I grew up in a middle-class family, went to a great public school, and I came back from that trip and was shaken. How are we not educating people about what's happening in the world and then empowering people to create change? And so I started my first nonprofit off of that.
Very cool. And what was that nonprofit?
So that nonprofit, through a very circuitous path and a merger, is called New Global Citizens. But the whole premise, and perhaps a funny story to tell, is that Arizona State University still today has a competition for student entrepreneurs. They give away $20,000 office space and a mentor. And I was a senior in college, and I thought, this is an awesome opportunity. I changed my major to nonprofit management by that point in time. My mother was devastated that I wasn't going to become Katie Couric. And I had this idea that I wanted to start a nonprofit, and so I submitted the business plan to ASU. I got a phone call my senior year that we'd been fully funded, $20,000, office space, and a mentor. And 3 weeks later, I walked into the office to collect what I thought was a big check and a key and find out who my mentor was, and there had been a misreading on the computer screen from whoever called me, and they were only giving me $1,000. Which wouldn't have been a big deal aside from the fact that I had turned down all the job offers I was out for in between the phone call and walking into the office. So I had no backup plan. I turned down some amazing offers, and I had $1,000 and an office space. But Laddie Core, the former president of ASU, was assigned as my mentor, which you couldn't find a better mentor than the president of the largest university in the country. And so Laddie Core, and I think what really was a catalyst for me in that organization was someone believed in my ability at the age of 22 to launch an organization. And 7 years later, we were in 14 states and 33 countries working with youth and partner projects.
That's amazing. So obviously that's where your heart probably comes from when it comes to social entrepreneurship. What gave you this idea to start an incubator here in Arizona, let alone just like a social mission-driven cause one? Because I feel like you were one of the very first incubators that was even here in Arizona, like way before incubators were cool, like no one knew what like YC was or anything like that. You were here starting this incubator and helping grow this economy here.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think back 5 years ago, you're right. Like, there really wasn't much here. And I remember being out in the community and people were like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? Social entrepreneurship, what? Like, what does that mean? People are thinking we're doing like social media focused things. It's like, no, this is about impact. And I think there were like 3 main pillars for me as to why I wanted to launch it. One was this notion that good ideas take people. Like, at the end of the day, an entrepreneur thinks like, I gotta have capital and I gotta have an office and I gotta have it, like, it's all people at the end of the day. It's all people and networks of access to people. And what Laddie Core provided for me was a network of access to people. And I thought, if I didn't have a Laddie Core, and if you're an entrepreneur and don't have someone like that, where do you go? Like, where do you find mentors and people that are gonna believe in you, are gonna take you seriously, and are not gonna try to shark you as an entrepreneur and take half your company in mentoring you? And so that was the first impetus, was like, I want to create a community where mentors can come and entrepreneurs can come and feel safe. The second was that in the landscape of social problems in the world, there are not enough people solving them. Like, we need to catalyze more people to take the leap of faith, to be bold and brave enough to dream, and to pursue something that's really hard and really gnarly. And I wanted to provide a community for those entrepreneurs to gather and feel like they had a peer network and a place to go. And then I think the third thing, being a native of Phoenix, is that I wanted to do it here. Right? Like, this would have been, I wouldn't say easy, but easier to do in Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York, right? That's where social entrepreneurs gravitate, or where the resources are. And the reality is that there are problem solvers everywhere in the world, in every community, in every nook and cranny. And if we could prove it in Phoenix, we could do it anywhere. And that's kind of been the catalyst now for our growth in launching in other cities and providing resources elsewhere.
Very cool. So you mentioned your mentorship with Laddie Core. What was, other than the network that was provided, what were some other big nuggets that you took away from that mentorship process?
I would say a few things. There had been a lot of people that doubted, right? This like 21-year-old kid with a dream. And Laddie instilled in me, and there's a famous quote, to never doubt yourself, because plenty of other people will do that for you. And there was something that resonated with me about that notion, that there are plenty of people that will doubt you, but if you believe in yourself and you get other people to believe, like, the world's your oyster. And I really gravitated kind of toward that methodology through him. The second was this notion of always carrying a wish list with me, and to this day I still have a wish list of either like people I want to meet or things that I need, and like we were starting like ground zero. Like I literally had $1,000, a key, and Laddie Core, like that was it. And so I made a list. I was like, I need a lawyer, I need an accountant, I need a designer, I need a website, I need a board, I need a pilot program site. Like I needed everything. And I took that wish list into Dr. Core and I was like, can you help? And he's like, yeah, I know someone that can connect you to here. And then you go down that path and I can connect you to here. And the ability to ask and to know when someone's sitting across from you and says like, how can I help? Boom, like here's my wish list, how can you help? And I think that's always just been a catalyst for me. And then the third thing, which came, I guess, through kind of a circuitous path and maybe a bit tangential or longer story, but I think it's worth telling, is Laddie Core introduced me to a gentleman by the name of Jerry Bisgrove. And Jerry Bisgrove was a colleague of Laddie's. He runs the Stardust Foundation, an incredibly wealthy philanthropist, an incredibly gracious philanthropist. And in my world, at that age, Jerry Bisgrove was like Bill Gates, right? Like seeing Jerry Bisgrove or meeting Jerry Bisgrove, it was like, oh my gosh. And I went to an event where I had spoken and shared kind of my story, and Jerry was there and Laddie was there, and he made the introduction. And Jerry pulls out his wallet as I'm walking up, and he said, what card would you like, the business card or the credit card? And wow. I was like, right, like one of the wealthiest philanthropists in Arizona just asked me if I wanted to spread, like, yes, we need cash, like stat. And I said,
can I just have that in my pocket
right?
from like now
yeah,
on?
Yeah, we can run that.
Yes.
But I said, I'll take the business card. And I went into Jerry's office a few weeks later, and in the community, he's like a big teddy bear of a guy. You just like want to squeeze his cheeks. But I walked into his office, and he was sitting in this huge, like high leather rollback chair, and he pushes a button on his desk, and the door closes.
Sounds very Dr. Evil.
I was like terrified. And he's like, what can I do for you? And I said, I'm sure you get asked for money all the time, but I'm really looking to build a community of people that are going to believe in this idea. And to fast forward, Jerry Bisgrove ended up throwing a luncheon for us at the Biltmore. He invited a few of his friends. I didn't really think at the time who Jerry's friends might be, but it was heads of the largest foundations in Arizona. It was the head of US Airways at the time, like an incredible group of 12 people that sat around a lunch table. I, meanwhile, have no idea what to do with like the 3 spoons on one side of my plate and the 14 knives on the other side. Like, I'm at the Biltmore, I'm totally in over my head. And we raised almost $180,000 at that event. And Jerry asked me year over year, how do you think that went? And he said, I'll host a luncheon for you for the next 5 years. You can invite however many people you want and I'll pay for it. And so through that, Jerry Bisgrove single-handedly helped raise multi-million dollars for the organization. And I tell that story not because of the financial transactions that took place thereafter, but because the relationship that I still had to this day with one of my dearest friends and colleagues, Jerry Bisgrove, and the network that he opened up to me, of which 10 of those 12 people that sat around that table are still mentors and advisors to me. And so the power of taking the business card materialized way more than a transactional relationship ever would.
And what do you think made them want to invest so much in you? Invest so much in SeedSpot?
It was New Global Citizens at the time, but I think the story is still true today, like why? Why would people invest in this idea? And I mean, I think part of it is I believe in it, and therefore other people believe in it. And I think in any founder situation, or as we look at companies that we work with, like, you have to believe in what you're doing, and that's contagious in many ways. I think the second is just being bold enough to like throw out the big dream and cast the big vision. And I think innately people want to be part of something bigger than themselves, and if you give them access to be part of that with you, they're gonna be along for the ride. And in SeedSpot's case, I think it's about the impact and now the track record that we have, that people have aligned to the brand and believe in what we're doing and want to see it continue.
That's terrific. So let's talk about year 1 at SeedSpot. What did that, I'm sure it was amazing, but what did that look like as far as getting SeedSpot off the ground? How did you get your first cohort in the door? What were the big projects that you remember? Kind of paint that story for us.
Yeah. So we started out really with nothing, again, which is true of any entrepreneurial story, I suppose. And we started to go out and talk first to entrepreneurs to make sure that there was value. And we sat like nights and weekends at coffee shops, my co-founder and I at the time, and like talking to entrepreneurs, like, would this be valuable to you? If so, how would you access it? Just kind of evangelizing for what was possible. And then we knew we had to raise money, and yes, we had to raise like $250,000 to get it off the ground, and we went company by company and asked for $5,000. And with that $5,000, we asked not just for the money, but for the in-kind support of the human talent that came with it. So if a law firm wrote a check, they also sent attorneys down to mentor the companies. And it was always a dual-sided thing. We never took a check without human capital. And so that was really how we launched. There were many chaotic events that took place, and on our website, we actually have a video of like the first few months and years of SeedSpot, and we had a building that fell through and we didn't get into it, and we were 2 weeks away from programming, and like a whole series of things just hit the fan. And then we had 191 entrepreneurs apply. Wow. And that to us was validation that there was an unmet demand and we had an obligation to serve it.
Very cool. So you're going through this process of starting SeedSpot. Year 1 is over. Were there any moments where you were saying, this might not work? I'm sure there were.
There still is, yeah, always.
So tell us about like any times where you feel like you hit rock bottom as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I would say certainly after year 1, there was always a question of like, I think in any startup, in my observation and working with now 5 years of early stage companies, there hits a pivot point when you are deemed quote unquote successful by the outside world and you have to make some tough choices. It is very easy to gravitate toward where a new market might be, or where the bright shiny object might be, or where the funding might be. And I would say the deepest challenges we've had at SeedSpot, which I'm proud we've come out of every single one of them, is testing our core and our core values and not deviating from who we are as an organization. And specifically, we've had entities and individuals that have said, we're going to invest in a fund, but that fund would only be able to fund high-tech, high-growth companies. Well, it doesn't really map to our inclusion focus on supporting any entrepreneur with a good idea. And we've worked with entrepreneurs that, yes, have had exits. We had one company acquired a few years ago. We've had some that have raised multiple rounds of capital. And we've worked with entrepreneurs like Matt Cottle, who came to us, 27 years old, adult with autism, who wanted to open a bakery to employ other adults with autism. And we were an incubator that was like, absolutely, this is a place for you. And so we've made some tough choices along the way. We've said no to some things. We've said no to money. We've said no to some big opportunities that weren't really aligned to our core. And I think that's the toughest moment in time, when the bright, shiny object sits in front of you and you really have to gut check why you started this in the first place.
Yeah, totally. So how do you feel like you stay focused yourself? Are there tactics that you use as an entrepreneur? Because it's really hard, especially when you do see the easy route to take that money, because that would just put the Band-Aid on right now, or to maybe shy away from, like, the social missions is, I can imagine, is very difficult. And what are those things that you do to keep yourself mentally in check as an entrepreneur?
Thankfully now, I have a really rock solid team, 2 of whom are here tonight. And I think if you surround yourself with really good people, they gut check things for you and with you. And I believe in, like, ultimate transparency with the team. And there have been multiple occasions, even as of late, that we're just bouncing things off to say, like, does this feel right? And I feel like and we've not always had the right hires. We've not always retained, every person we brought on the team, but finding that right chemistry of a team, and everything that you read about teams being paramount, it's true. And so that's one gut check for me. I would say the other, when I'm feeling like just off base, is I just go to the ground. And now, usually, that's talking to an alum, that's getting in a classroom, that's giving a guest lecture, that's one-on-one mentoring with an entrepreneur, just to, like, remind myself of, like, why did I start this thing in the first place? And it's about the humans that we support. So that's another litmus test for me. And then just trusting your intuition. It's never wrong, ever. So don't second guess it. It's never wrong.
Very cool. So you mentioned that you take on some difficult cases in entrepreneurship. SeedSpot itself has been noted for being making some huge waves when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and you've received, an Emmy. That's amazing. So please tell your story about why, what that focus is, why social entrepreneurship brings that in and helps foster that.
Yeah, I think social entrepreneurship in general is just like a level playing field, right? Anyone that wants to solve a problem that's good for humanity should. Agnostic of age, gender, ethnicity, geographic location, ability, doesn't matter. And I think just in our DNA as an organization and baked into our core values is, like, anyone has the authority and capacity to create change if they choose to do so. And so we have strategically aligned ourselves with some partners. Univision, that you referenced with the Emmy, which is a totally random thing as an incubator to say, like, we won an Emmy. But we had a partnership with Univision, and we recognized in the Latino community there were incredible ideas that were being underserved. And so we launched a partnership with Univision. We held a casting call at Univision Studios. It was like American Idol meets social entrepreneurship. It was epic. We've done it 2 years in a row. And these entrepreneurs turned out at 6 a.m., like, name badges on, went through vetting of community leaders that were looking at ideas. We incubated them for 5 days in a boot camp and then accelerated the top 3. And then they pitched on TV. And Univision televised it, and it was all about accelerating this notion that, anyone can serve and support social change. So part of it's been done through partnerships, part of it's been done, and we're still working on, and we're super transparent about, social modeling and how do we find more women specifically and minority entrepreneurs to serve as mentors. How do we build a stronger investor base? How does our board and staff reflect that community? Because 49% of our alumni are female founders and 45% are minority.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Thanks.
So congrats.
Not statistically.
Very cool. So you touched on your core values. I always love hearing founders and how they actually came to some of their core values. A lot of times there's interesting stories behind each one. What are the core values of SeedSpot, and how did you come up with each one?
Yeah. So we have, like, an external core values, and then we have an internal kind of culture core values.
Interesting. I think that's the first time I've heard that one.
Yeah. So externally, it's all about building a safe space. It's about protecting the entrepreneur and being inclusive and entrepreneur first. And I think a lot of those lessons, and we didn't, like, go out on day one and be like, these are our core values. Like, it was probably year 2 that we were like, yes, these are definitely our core values. And it was by trial and error. Some of them around protecting the entrepreneur specifically came out of individuals that came to SeedSpot looking to take advantage of early stage companies, looking to shark entrepreneurs, giving bad advice, just trying to get on the inside, and we're like, yep, you're out. And my favorite conversations to have are, like, firing mentors and people that come in to be like, yeah, no, not here, go somewhere else. Or don't go anywhere, actually, is what we tell them. Don't go anywhere near entrepreneurs. So some of it's been like testing, right? We've been tested and then we just like oust people and it's like, that's a core value. And then I think internally, it's been really, I think it was year 2.5, maybe even year 3, that we built an internal culture. And some of those values are like, if you say that's not my job, you're fired. Like, it's a team-based environment. If it's about you.
And with entrepreneurship, basically everyone at a startup is wearing all the same hats, so.
You're all in together all the time. So I think our internal culture has evolved, and with every new person that we bring on or every person that exits the team, it's like we just learn more and more about like what really makes this team and this culture click. And that's, again, trial and error, and documenting that, being vocal about your failures. There's a lot of amazing things. I just saw something today called Startup Failures, and it's like a whole like data set dedicated to failures in startups. Wow. My husband sent it to me and I was like, that is awesome. But I think just like being acknowledging and debriefing about what didn't work and then building a stronger culture around that.
So what were some things about entrepreneurship that surprised you? What were those things?
Oh, geez. I mean, I think first and foremost, like I never really considered myself when I started New Global Citizens, like I didn't consider myself an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of people don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs, and I think especially in the social impact space, we find a lot of entrepreneurs, quote unquote, that don't self-identify, right? They're like, well, I'm just solving a problem, I just launched a business, I'm not an entrepreneur. It's like, you are, if you're willing to take the risk. I'm surprised by and I'm thankful for events like Startup Grind, like this glamour around entrepreneurship, this like sexiness around entrepreneurship is total BS. Like, it is really hard, and it is really lonely, and it is really challenging, and there's a lot of self-doubt and a lot of self-esteem and a lot of issues you have to overcome just as a human being to take this on. And I wish more people talked about that. I wish more people supported that. And we at SeedSpot often find ourselves like coaching the human being, and we say in one of our values, like, entrepreneur is first, not the company. The entrepreneur is first. The human being that we serve is first. If they make a call and say, hey, I don't want my company to grow beyond 2 employees, awesome. That's your call, and we support you as a human being in that. So I think that's been, surprising across the ecosystem. And I'm still shocked every report I read from the Kauffman Foundation that comes out, and their research is brilliant and amazing. Still, the lack of diversity in women in entrepreneurship is still surprising to me. And we are on a mission to change that.
Awesome. And why do you think there is that shortage? I mean, I can go on a million reasons, but I want to hear what your thoughts on that.
I mean, some of the data suggests and the research suggests that, part of it's around social modeling, that people don't see themselves in entrepreneurs that are on the big stage. And I mean, you Google entrepreneur right now, you Google entrepreneur, what shows up? White men, right? Truthfully, like, that is what people think of. And so I think there's a social modeling effect that women or minorities don't see themselves in the mainstream media. I think that's changing, and I think that's a powerful force for change, but that was not statistically or visually the norm. I think the other piece of it, and we do a lot of work in this in Kauffman's kind of research around this, is these on-ramps and not siloing entrepreneurs. There's a lot of incubators or accelerators or programs that say, like, we are only for African-American entrepreneurs. Well, that creates a silo effect for those entrepreneurs that they can't access mainstream capital or can't have those engage in those conversations. And so we see a lot of our programs just as on-ramps, right? As an entry point, as a safe space, but you are fully capable and should fully vet with every other entrepreneur, agnostic of who you are and what you look like and what your age is and what your ability, like, you should enter mainstream. So I think part of that and the problem that we're trying to solve is providing some on-ramps for entrepreneurs. I'll leave it at that.
Awesome, very cool. So you mentioned that you at SeedSpot will try to really address the human being first. And there's a lot of really cool things about you that you do that are very human being-ish. Other than just being an entrepreneur and running a company, it can be very wearing. You're an avid yogi, you're a triathlete. How did you get into that? Does that tie into entrepreneurship at all for you to help, like, with the mental game at all or anything like that?
Yeah, my dad said something years ago that I really thought was his quote, and it turns out it was someone famous. But he said, Courtney, we're called human beings, not human doings. And I was like, Dad, you're really smart. Like, that's amazing, right? Some famous person said that. But it always resonated with me, and I think, especially in my early 20s, being an entrepreneur, and like there was a lot of fanfare and a lot of media coverage and a lot of awards and all that nonsense, and I felt this like pressure that I always had to be on, right? Like I literally wouldn't go to a coffee shop in yoga pants and flip-flops for fear that someone would see me like off, right? Like that's crazy. But I do feel like a lot of entrepreneurs and even CEOs or people in leadership positions in general feel like you have to have it like all together and you got to put on the face and facade and you live these like bifurcated lives that you're one person in public and you're one person in private. And that took me, and I could write a book about that, and I might one day, through my 20s to just like break free of that. And like, I am who I am, agnostic of where I am and who I'm in front of. That's who I am. And that, trust me, took a journey to get to this place. But I just believe in being real. And so part of that, I have a 2-year-old daughter. She comes with me, and many of you may have met her. She comes with me everywhere, right? Like, I don't apologize for having a daughter. Like, she's part of my life. My work is part of my life. Like, they obviously intersect. And doing like triathlons, and I remember in the office when I was training for the Ironman, I had a bike desk that I just like rolled into the office, like got my bike shorts on, and I like cranked on my laptop, and my laptop sat on top of my desk, and I would cycle for 3 hours at the office, and like people would walk in and be like, hey, yeah, you can talk, we can have a meeting, but like I'm on the bike right now.
I was about to ask you, how did you train being a triathlete
while
being a CEO?
Yeah, it was insane, and there's a fellow Ironman in the audience tonight. Like, it's freaking crazy, right? It's crazy. Yeah, you're training 30 hours a week at the end of it. But I just wove it in. I found like the mental capacity of swim to be, I went on like whatever, time of day, lunch breaks, early mornings, whatever.
What made you say that you wanted to do the Ironman? What is, that's crazy, right?
It is insane.
Not the only one in here
well,
that thinks
truthfully, I said I wanted to do a half Ironman by the time I hit 30. And I thought that would be my greatest athletic accomplishment as an adult ever. And I did the half Ironman at the age of 30. And then I was like, well, those Ironman people are crazy. Like, they're just not. Half is one thing. Like, that's crazy enough, but those Ironman people are nuts. And then I crossed the finish line at the half Ironman, and I think just being a type A personality, I was like, okay, game on. I can do this. And it was incredible. The training was far harder than the actual event, and I think that's true of any journey, right? Like, getting to the destination is easy. The journey to get there is hard.
Perfect. I have one more question, and then I'm going to do our 21 questions. And then, that's right, we're going to drink to that. And then we'll have the opportunity for everyone to be able to ask your own questions to Courtney. So what is the high point of entrepreneurship? What keeps you going?
The impact. Anytime I talk to an alum or an entrepreneur, or we now run a high school program. We teach social entrepreneurship in high schools. We had 1,500 students across the country go through our social entrepreneurship class last year. And for me, like, I talk to one student, like, I'm in. You talk to one entrepreneur that, for me, their company's success has little to do with my motivation, candidly. Their personal efficacy and the belief in themselves and the fact that they're pursuing something that they want to pursue and they're creating change within that, that's, to me, what matters.
Perfect. All right, here we go. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Okay.
I'm allergic to cats.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Sushi or tacos?
Sushi all the way.
What's your favorite app?
Slack. Slack all the way.
Love it.
They sent me a pair of socks last time I endorsed them.
That's great.
Yes, like great customer service, Slack, like amazing. They sent me their logo on socks.
Side note,
Epic.
one of their engineers was making sock monkeys out of those socks.
They're like,
so yeah.
It's a great company. Slack, if you've never used it, download it.
And then speaking of favorite apps, and I know like we're not supposed to like pick our favorite children, but what is your favorite app that has come out of SeedSpot? Or favorite company that's come out of SeedSpot?
Oh, geez, that's, wow. Yeah, there's so many good ones. I'm really
You
proud
can
of
shout
our
out
high
like
school.
3, so they're not.
Yeah, like Stuttering King Bakery had my heart from day one. The baker I told you about, Matt Cottle, yeah, he was in our first cohort, and I'll never forget that moment when his mom was like, I can't believe that my son got into your program. Like, I will never forget that moment and that look in her eyes that we took Matt Cottle into our program and helped his company. Like, I will never forget that moment. On the high school side, like, the high school students are ridiculous. But one team last year created a product called Braille Board, and they identified that if you have a smartphone and you're blind and you're in a meeting or an event like this, you can't Siri into your phone and be like, hey, I'm running late, right? But there's also no Braille on your keyboard. It's a smartphone. And so the students prototyped and through our program designed a Bluetooth-enabled keyboard that connects to a smartphone. And they won a Bluetooth Young Innovators Award, and Josh Kaplan, the CEO of that company, got a $200,000 scholarship to study entrepreneurship in any university in the country he wanted to. And that to me was like amazing. Like you're solving a problem, it has market potential, you're being acknowledged by the broader community, you're 17 years old, and you're gonna change the world.
It's amazing. Very cool. What's your favorite operating system?
Is that like Mac? Yes. Apple, Mac. Clearly not the tech person on the team.
Awesome.
I looked to John Johnson. Tell me something. I don't
What's
know.
your favorite holiday?
Oh, I was born on the 4th of July, so that's kind of fun. Thanksgiving, Christmas. Yeah, Thanksgiving. Like the fall is my favorite. Football in the fall is the best.
What's your favorite car?
No car, bike. Yeah, I would like mass transit all the way.
You would get along with Jim, because the founder of
Oh
Donuts.
yeah. We've chatted. Yeah.
What's your favorite vacation spot?
Ooh, anywhere in Central America. Yeah.
What's your favorite book?
The Giver by Lois Lowry.
Wow. Favorite movie or TV show?
Oh, I'm so bad at pop culture. I like literally watch nothing. The Newsroom. I watched that. I like binged that. Right. Yeah, that was a good one. It's now off air, but it was amazing.
Who's your favorite musical artist?
Again, pop culture. It's not really my thing. When I was training for Ironman, though, Katy Perry's Roar got me through a lot of long rides. Yeah.
What's your go-to karaoke song? I'm just going to continue down these
Yeah,
awesome
the pop
questions.
culture's terrible. Yeah, I have no karaoke go-to.
All right, you're like me. I kind of just avoid it and then hope no one looks me in the eyes and calls me up. Anything you collect?
I don't collect. I'm a minimalist, like hardcore, but I am obsessed with the post office. I love everything about the post office, but I don't collect stamps. But I would like wait in line at the post office for like a day. I just love everything about like old school mail. I love going to the post office. Yeah, sometimes it's like we have one package and the next package isn't ready, and I'm like, no, I'll just go tomorrow. Like it's fine. I love the post office.
Do you like talking to the people there?
I do. I like the smell of the post office. I love waiting in line at the post office. I just love the like nostalgia of the post office. But I do think I did trace it back recently because this has been like a long time like love affair with the post office. And finally my husband like why? Like just tell me why. Like this is weird. And my grandmother, I lived across the country from her, and my grandmother, when I was young, always sent me letters. And I always felt connected to her through letters. And I think that was just this like nostalgia. So I'm a huge fan. I write probably more handwritten notes than any human on the planet. Like I'm a big fan of a stamp in the mail, old school.
That's awesome. Yeah. The OG email.
Random.
What about any unusual skills or talents? I mean, I feel like being a triathlete is like your
it was
go-to
not a skill or
right
a talent. I just got through that one. I was a gymnast for 12 years. That's kind of random. Yeah, no real like random unique skill. Not that I can think of. I may come back to that one, but.
Okay. What's your top strength in business?
Communication.
All right.
For sure.
How do you think, is that just living within you, or is that something you feel like you
I did
honed?
speech and debate when I was in high school, and that was a game changer. Yeah, the ability to articulate and communicate. Yeah.
What profession other than your own would you attempt?
Ooh. There was just so random on the post. There was a job opening of the post office in Antarctica. I totally thought about applying. I might be a postal worker for a few months. I think it'd be fun.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I'm surprised you didn't. You know the company Ship?
No. Are they disrupting the postal industry?
They
I will
did,
not like them.
Yeah.
No.
Well, kind of. So they're disrupting the first mile of shipping, is what they're saying.
Okay.
So they come get the packages from people, which
Okay.
completely destroys your
I'm all
entire
about the carbon
experience.
footprint, but no.
What is the best compliment someone can give you?
When someone tells me that I help them believe in themselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's a cause you're passionate about?
Right now, deeply passionate about the future of agriculture. My husband's in ag tech, and the future of agriculture is an interesting one that needs a lot of disruption, and that's a passion for me right now.
Very cool. What's one thing on your bucket list?
It's the first one that came to mind. My daughter's been on 122 flights.
Whoa.
She's not 2 yet, And one of our bucket list items is to rack up enough miles for her by the time she's 18 that she can travel the world for a year.
Wow, that's really cool. Very cool.
But now we have to start paying when she turns 2, so we'll see how that goes.
That's awesome. All right, so now it's time for questions. So raise your hand, and we've got mics going around, so awesome.
What were some key talents you developed in your 20s that you really for?
Some key talents I developed in my 20s that were really important. The ability to have hard conversations. That was a tough one. The ability to read a financial statement. I did not take a finance class in college, wasn't required to, which I think was a total error. I think the ability to just like really build and maintain relationships. And there's a whole body of research around like 7 touch points in a year and how do you really maintain authentic relationships with people. But I think in my 20s, I learned a lot about what it takes to really maintain relationships with people that are meaningful.
If you hadn't been connected to Jerry Bisgrove, what would you have done? Where do you see seed spot with you today?
If I hadn't been connected to Jerry Bisgrove, he was a game changer for me in a lot of ways. Capital aside, like that organization would not have grown without the connections and the network that he opened me up to. So I think it would have been a much harder and longer road had he not taken a risk on me. I also don't think I would have ever learned the power, like the network effect, that you meet one person and their network becomes available to you. And I think that's been a really powerful thing for me to learn and kind of know how to navigate, because that's super intimidating to ask someone to like open up their network or put themselves on the line for you. And I don't think I would have learned that without him. And then there are like 1,000 lessons that I've learned from him as a human being that I'm forever indebted for, just like one-on-one conversations and dinner chats and like not just career stuff, but life stuff that he's taught me. Yeah. There's another one up there. Down here.
Hi, Nathan Harris. What are some things you think that the feeding startup community needs to take it to the next level?
Ooh, that's a great question. More investors that are willing to take risks, like real risks. I would say from the entrepreneur standpoint, like more moonshot ideas, more like just go big or go home kind of attitude. I would say more showcasing of the diversity of entrepreneurs that we have in the Valley, for sure, because there's amazing ideas in pockets that don't get the spotlight all the time. So from a media standpoint, like challenging the media to take that on. I think.
What are some of those pockets that you're seeing?
Pockets
of places that people need to take moonshots or people need to invest in?
You name the issue. Education in the state. If you got an education idea, like go big or go home. Like call the Gates Foundation tomorrow. Like the state is in 48th in the country for education. Like don't mess around if you're tackling an issue in education. Healthcare, there's a lot of awesome rock star evangelists here in Arizona, like aligned to every single CEO in the healthcare space that's looking to innovation. And I have a few if you're in that space. If you're in the like water in the desert, like agriculture and the future of agriculture, like don't mess around. Climate change is real, like food security is on the line. Like I just think about the microcosm, and I think if you look at every industry vertical and say, yes, I'm tackling an issue in healthcare, I'm tackling an issue in education, or I'm tackling an issue in, you name it, like that issue is much bigger than you realize, and you are playing a part of a much bigger game. And so don't minimize your ability to think just small and like, you know, whatever that may be. So yeah, I think just more big moonshot ideas. And then I think too, just more events like this, and I come in, start grind and galvanize, and like the ecosystem is growing. I continue to be proud of, and I hope it always stays that way in Phoenix, that it is not a competitive startup scene. Like that has to stay true. And there was some back in the day, like, you know, this and that, and us versus them, and like, I think a lot of that's gone, but the ability for the startup community to really rally and be united and not compete for resources and not be catty about things is like critical to an ecosystem growing. Yeah, I think there was a question up there and one down here.
Hi, my name is Melissa. You talked a little bit about your network, the importance of it. I'd like to hear a little bit more about mentorship and
Yeah, for sure. I could, and maybe I should write a blog post about this one. Like, mentorship is like, it's such a like I get asked more often than not, like, how do I find a mentor? What do I ask a mentor? Like, how do I engage a mentor? Like, so first and foremost, make a wish list of all the skill sets you need. Like, all the things that keep you up at night, whether it's finance or accounting, like, you name it. Like, just make the wish list of, like, these are all the things that I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, or I feel like I'm totally in over water, which there will probably be many if you're really honest with yourself, and you should be. Then make a list of, like, if in a dream world, who would I identify with? And I just coached an entrepreneur going through SeedSpot, and she's like, if I could get the CTO of GoDaddy to be my mentor, that would be amazing. Like, done, let's make that happen. So figuring out, if you don't know them by name, just by function, who would be the best person qualified to fill that need for you? And then you go out a layer further and say, who in my network may have access to those people? So it's like need, type of person, if not specific name of person, and then who in my network can get me access to them. And if no one in your network, and I did this like a lot in my early 20s, is I trolled through the newspaper, I went online, and I was like, top business person in Arizona, top tech person in Arizona, top website developer in Arizona, and I just cold called, or I wrote them an old school letter with a stamp in the mail, and the amount of response rates that I got back is incredible. Like Seth Godin, I reached out to via old school mail, he wrote back. Jim Collins wrote back. Like, people don't, when was the last time you got a piece of mail? Right? That's the problem. So send a piece of mail, you'd be shocked at the response rate. And then I trolled a lot in my early 20s of like the top 20 business people, the people that win all the awards. Congratulations, would love to sit down and have coffee with you. I did that one year on a list that I was on, which I shouldn't have been on, and like 16 out of the other 19 people responded and had coffee with me. Wow. So like, people don't get asked very often, if you really think about it, like, will you sit down and have a cup of coffee with me? Like, can I pick your brain about something? So once you get them kind of like on the hook, if you will, then it's like any other relationship. You're dating them, like you're not getting married, they're not signing some agreement that they're your mentor forever, and just testing out and asking for advice. Like, ask for advice, everything else will follow, doors will open, money will follow, but like, ask for advice and make them feel part of your storyline, and then follow up and do what you say you're gonna do in terms of that.
I've learned this myself, just to ask, and I'm always shocked at how many people actually say yes. Was that something that you experienced yourself, or?
Do you know the number one reason why people give? Because they're asked. Like, there's no, if you look at philanthropy, if you look at investment, if you look at, like, the number one reason why people give is because they're asked. But not enough people ask, so just ask. The worst thing they can do is say no, and you probably don't want to work with them anyway, so like, ask.
Listening to you is just so encouraging.
You're so sweet.
It's just amazing. So I don't know much about SeedSpot, but do you also help international entrepreneurs? I have a heart for India and for children there. And so do you also do those?
We do.
And if you do you work with existing organizations that are already in those countries? Do you partner with them, and could you explain that?
Yeah, so I would say from an entrepreneur standpoint, like if you had an idea that was serving a community in India, absolutely, we would support that. We are getting into a model now where we are essentially helping other communities launch SeedSpot programs. And so we're partnering with universities and others internationally that may want to deploy our curriculum in their home country. So that's a kind of a path that we're pursuing. But I would say, in general, we really leave it up to the entrepreneur. We help navigate to say, you know, if you are pursuing, you know, XYZ solution, who are the right partners to align with? How do you approach those partners? What's the ask of those partners? Like, we help coach through that process. But we as an organization don't, you know, directly outreach to partners on behalf of the organization. But the entrepreneurs, absolutely, yeah, we help through the whole process and making sure that strategically you're aligned with the people that you need to be and can get in the door. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have, if any of you are familiar with the Lean canvas, in the business model canvas, we have a social impact canvas. So we adapted that based around impact, and at the core, it's like, what problem are you trying to solve and what impact are you trying to create? Yeah. I think there was a question back here, yeah, two there.
You talk about go big or go home. What does dreaming big look like for you now?
Ooh, I like that one.
Hard questions. So one is determining how quickly we can scale the SeedSpot model. We did just open a Washington, D.C. office, which has been amazing. We're serving entrepreneurs in D.C. right now as city number 2. But we realize if we try to launch every city in that methodology, it's going to be slow to grow. So we're considering kind of a license model to unleash our curriculum or unleash our methodology. The vision, 1,000 cities across the country and around the world that are deploying SeedSpot programs. And then our high school program. The big vision is to be in every high school in the world, teaching social entrepreneurship and empowering the next generation to create change.
So I have a question. Why Washington, D.C.? Did you want to be close to the political movement? Because no? Really? Okay. So what was why Washington, D.C.?
So we kind of did, it was a year and a half ago now, we got funding from the Kauffman Foundation out of Kansas City to expand our model, and we put a website link and said, if you're a community that could benefit from a seed spot, tell us why you, and we had an individual in Washington, D.C., along with other communities, raise their hand and say, we want one here. And Seifert Gresham on our team really literally traveled across the country, met with dozens of communities, and we really saw something in DC that there was a vibrant ecosystem supporting entrepreneurs, but there was a huge deficit in the early stage social entrepreneurship space. And so we were invited into that community. We felt like we could really serve that community, and we launched because of it.
Awesome. I think it'll really serve to your advantage because even though you didn't want to be there, you're there.
We wanted to be there, just not for political reasons. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of issues that you could tackle and then be right in that neck of the woods. So awesome. All right.
Is there another question over here?
Okay, so this might be a little bit of a deep question, but I would like to think that you were an insanely creative and motivated individual, like an entrepreneur. And studies show that with that intense hyperactivity and creativity, that can actually drive you to go crazy. So from what I just said, you touched on intuition, right? So when you have all of this activity going on in your mind, has there ever been a time when you've gotten out of touch with your intuition, and are there any kind of tips and tricks on how you kind of get back to that, and how you kind of take out those externalities in your life that hinder your core values and your intuition?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate you asking it. So the first thing, and this was a hard lesson for me to learn, was the external pressure. The external pressure, and I felt it in my 20s. A lot of people expected me to be something that I really never thought of myself to be. And gut checking that to say what everybody else expects of me may not be what I expect of myself, and being really honest with what I expect of myself and what I see my future to be, and like shutting out all the noise. And that takes, whether it's a yoga practice or a journal or a walk in the woods or whatever, just be like, I'm not gonna listen to any of the voices that are like rattling in my head. That's one, and that's really hard to do. The second thing, and this was a lesson from Jerry Bisgrove, he said to me at one point in time, he said, you'll know that you're in the right spot when your head, your heart, and your stomach align. And if your head and your heart align, but your gut feels off, it's not the right decision. If your gut feels right, but your head can't rationalize it, it's not the right decision. And in any life situation, the number of times that your head leads, your heart tries to follow, but your gut is still off, is more than I can count. And so finding whatever practice or whatever solace or whatever quiet space or whatever journal, whatever it is, to really, truly gut check that and to not tell yourself a lie. Because it's really easy to tell yourself, well, my head's gonna rationalize this, my heart can kind of get behind it, but my gut doesn't feel right, but that's okay, because it's just off today. Like, that's never true. So for me, that just always like resonated with me as my litmus test to know what's right, and to be self-aware enough and cognizant enough to say, like, this is my head driving that. That's a fear-based reaction I'm having, or that's something that I'm in my head about, and I gotta get out of that and gut check back. And that's when I've gone back to like the root, or taking a walk, or sat on my yoga, whatever that is, that I just can like get away from the noise.
Great, we have time for one more question.
It kind of goes along with what you were just saying, but I was really interested about the internal culture, or because you, and I forgot how you worded it previously, but your internal versus external. With the internal, and especially as you're increasing in other cities, how do you keep living most effective for keeping the entire team focused on that internal mission that has been already established and you know we're going to be right?
Yeah. So I think it's hard. One, it's hard for any organization to maintain a culture. But I think there's a few things that we as a team kind of abide by, and they're not like written code. And I think part of it is going to be, as we scale, documenting very specifically what this culture is and what that means. Because it's very easy to conceptualize that as we enter more high schools or enter more cities, someone deviates from that or excludes an entrepreneur or is not truly inclusive or puts down someone's dream or doesn't accept them because it's not a high growth, high tech startup, like we have an obligation now at this stage of growth to document very specifically how we live those core values. And I think there's a distinction, and we have felt it in that you can display your core values and they can be on the wall or they can be on your website, but like getting really specific about what we mean by that. And we have documented so far some very specific examples of what that means and what that does not mean. And I think that's what we're going to be challenged to do. And there's going to be times that folks deviate from that, and that just makes the brand stronger. And I think being aware, for us, for me at least, it's like being aware and okay with the fact that stuff's going to go wrong. Someone's going to deviate from the brand, someone's going to deviate from the values, but that is going to teach us something that makes that brand stronger, and we're going to embrace that as a failure and move on from it. And that's what's brought us to this point, and I have to believe that's what will carry us forward.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.